What separates competition from something far more dangerous? Not the score. Not the stakes. Not even the history between two teams that once shared the same city and now exist on opposite ends of everything: talent, ambition, and the kind of future that only one of them can clearly see. What separates competition from something far more dangerous is intention. And what happened in the fifth inning of that game, the moment the Angels' second baseman made his move toward Shohei Ohtani, had nothing to do with competition. Everyone inside that stadium knew it instantly. The umpire knew it. The Dodgers knew it. And the thousands of people watching in silence as the scene unfolded knew it too. The ejection came quickly. But the outrage that followed it has not gone away. And once you understand the full picture of what actually happened in that fifth inning, the build-up, the moment itself, and the reaction it triggered, you will understand why this story is about something much larger than one ejection in one game. To understand the full impact of what happened, you first need to understand what this game meant before a single pitch was thrown. Angels vs. Dodgers is never just a baseball game. It carries the particular tension of two franchises that exist in the same geographic space but inhabit entirely different realities right now. One organization is building toward something. The other is watching what it used to have, in the form of Shohei Ohtani, perform at a level that makes the decision to let him walk feel, with every passing game, more and more painful. That pain does not stay in the front office. It filters down. Into the dugout. Into the clubhouse. Into the way players carry themselves when they step onto a field and see, standing on the other side of it, the man whose presence once made their organization feel like it was on the edge of something special. Ohtani had already made his presence felt early in the game. His preparation was visible in the way it always is, not through showmanship or performance, but through the quiet, unmistakable efficiency of someone who has done the work and arrived ready. Every at-bat carried the weight of that preparation. Every movement on the field reflected it. By the time the fifth inning arrived, the tension inside that stadium had been building for 4 full innings. And then, in a single moment, it stopped building and became something else entirely. The key here is the sequence. Because the cheap shot did not exist in isolation. It was the product of everything that had accumulated before it, and understanding that sequence is the only way to understand why the reaction to it was as powerful as it was. Ohtani was moving through the inning with the focused composure that defines him in competitive situations. Nothing about his body language suggested awareness of what was coming. Why would it? This was a baseball game. Whatever tensions existed between these two franchises, whatever complicated feelings surrounded his departure from Anaheim, the field itself was supposed to be governed by the rules and standards of professional competition. The Angels' second baseman had other ideas. What he did, the specific nature of the cheap shot directed at Ohtani, was not the product of a split-second decision made in the heat of an intense play. Those who were positioned to see it clearly described it as deliberate. Targeted. The kind of action that requires a moment of decision before it happens, a moment where a person chooses to cross a line they are fully aware exists. Ohtani's reaction in the immediate aftermath was, characteristically, contained. He did not escalate. He did not gesture or speak in a way designed to draw attention to what had just happened. He absorbed it with the same composure he brings to every difficult moment, quietly, without performance, without the kind of reaction that invites further chaos. But the umpire saw everything. There are moments in baseball where an umpire faces a genuine judgment call. Where reasonable people could look at the same action and arrive at different conclusions about what it merited. This was not one of those moments. The ejection of the Angels' second baseman was immediate. It was decisive. And it carried with it the particular firmness that umpires reserve for situations where the violation is not just of a rule, but of a standard. A standard of conduct that professional baseball depends on to function as something more than controlled chaos. It is important to note what that ejection communicated beyond the technical removal of a player from a game. It communicated that what had been directed at Ohtani was seen. That it was recognized for what it was. and that the authority present on that field was not going to allow it to pass without consequence. The Angels' dugout responded with the kind of noise that always follows an ejection, argument, frustration, the performance of outrage that teams produce when one of their own faces consequences. But the arguments carried no real weight, because everyone present knew what had happened. The ejection was not a matter of interpretation. It was a matter of simple, observable fact. And when the second baseman finally left the field, slowly, reluctantly, in the way that players leave when they know the argument is already lost, the stadium exhaled. And then the outrage, which had been compressed into stunned silence during the moments immediately following the cheap shot, finally found its voice. What happened in the Dodgers' dugout and on the field in the moments following the ejection told its own story. This is a team that has developed, over the course of this season, a particular sensitivity to anything directed at Ohtani. Not because they are overprotective or reactive in ways that create unnecessary drama, but because they understand who he is, not just as a player, but as a person, and because that understanding has generated a genuine, unperformed commitment to making sure he is never left to navigate difficult moments alone. When the cheap shot happened, the response from his teammates was immediate. Not violent. Not retaliatory in ways that would have shifted the story away from what the Angels' second baseman had done and toward the Dodgers' reaction to it. But present. Unmistakably, firmly present. Dave Roberts, watching from the dugout with the controlled intensity that defines his managing style, was visibly furious. Those close enough to read his expression in that moment described something that went beyond competitive anger. This was personal. This was a manager who has invested genuinely in the well-being of his player, not just his performance, watching someone make a deliberate choice to treat that player as a target. Roberts made his feelings known through the appropriate channels. Firmly. Clearly. Without the kind of public spectacle that would have distracted from the real issue. But no one who witnessed his reaction in those moments had any doubt about where he stood or how seriously he was taking what had just occurred. Here is the part of the story that deserves the most attention. Not the ejection. Not the outrage. Not the furious manager or the responding teammates. Ohtani's composure in the immediate aftermath of the cheap shot. He did not retaliate. He did not seek sympathy. He did not use the moment to make a statement about himself or his feelings or the complicated history between him and the organization that once employed him. He straightened. He refocused. And when the situation had been handled by the appropriate authorities, when the umpire had made his decision and the ejected player had left the field, Ohtani returned his attention to the game. That response is not accidental. It is not simply a personality trait that Ohtani happened to be born with. It is the product of years of deliberate self-construction. Of choosing, repeatedly and consistently, to invest energy in what can be controlled, preparation, performance, routine, rather than in what cannot. People who have observed Ohtani closely over extended periods of time describe a person whose emotional discipline is as carefully developed as his physical conditioning. Just as he approaches his body as a system to be understood and optimized, he approaches his responses to external events the same way. What serves him? What does not? What is worth his energy, and what is simply noise that has no productive place in the mental space he needs to perform at the level he performs at? A cheap shot from an opponent, even a deliberately targeted, clearly intentional one, falls into the category of noise. Not because it does not matter, but because allowing it to occupy mental space that belongs to preparation and performance would give it a power that Ohtani has no interest in granting. That understanding, that composure, is a significant part of what separates him from everyone else on that field. The ejection happened. The game continued. But the story did not end when the final out was recorded. The Angels' second baseman faces a review process that will determine what additional consequences follow the in-game ejection. And the nature of that review, the seriousness with which it is conducted, the weight given to the deliberate nature of what occurred, and the clarity of the message delivered through whatever punishment ultimately results, will say something important about the standards the league is committed to maintaining. This matters beyond this specific incident. Because the treatment of Ohtani, the way opponents choose to engage with him, the way situations like this one are handled when they arise, sets a precedent. It tells every player in the league what the acceptable boundaries of competition look like when the most prominent player in the sport is involved. If the consequence is proportional, if it reflects the deliberateness of the action and the seriousness of directing that kind of behavior at any player, let alone one of Ohtani's standing, then the message is clear. If it is not, a different message is sent. One that no one invested in the integrity of this sport should be comfortable with. The league is aware of the attention this situation has generated. The response will be watched closely. Pull back from the fifth inning. Pull back from the ejection and the furious manager and the responding teammates. And look at what all of it, taken together, actually reveals. Shohei Ohtani's presence in this league generates reactions that go beyond normal competitive feeling. His talent, his discipline, his contract, his profile, all of it creates an atmosphere around him that most players never experience and that no rulebook fully anticipates. Most people respond to that atmosphere with admiration. With the simple, honest acknowledgement that they are watching something that does not come along often, perhaps once in a generation, perhaps less. But some respond differently. With a resentment that builds quietly and then, in a moment of poor judgment on a baseball field, expresses itself in a way that crosses every line that professional competition is supposed to respect. The Angels' second baseman made that choice in the fifth inning. The umpire responded. The league will respond further. And Ohtani, as he always does, will simply continue to do the work. Because for him, that has always been the only answer worth giving.